Gerry Pantazis, welcome back to Australian Musician.
Thank you so much for inviting me back.
Gerry, most kids I know at school, or knew at school, wanted to be a guitarist. What drew you to the drums?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure what drew me to the instrument, but I did start out learning piano first for at least a year or so, and that didn't quite work out. And then I tried electric bass for about a year as well when I was probably around 10 years old, and that didn't quite work out. And then I think I just asked my father whether I could try the drums. So it was actually just to try it and see if I was any good at it. I was always exposed to music at home, so and my father being a professional musician and my brother being a guitar player, I think I just wanted to kind of chime in on it as well and actually play an instrument. So we tried the piano, we tried the bass, and none of that worked out. So I gave the drums a shot, and I kind of just gravitated towards it and really enjoyed practicing and learning and stuff like that. So it's quite ironic now because I do appreciate, I love guitar players and I love bass players, and I wish I was one of them, So, but as far as what drew me to drumming, I don't think it was anything in particular, maybe just for the love of music, actually to play an instrument, and then I fell in love with it. So yeah, that's what got me interested, was to actually start with something.
And what was the first kit that you started out on?
It was an old, like a early 70s sort of Pearl kit, a pre-export sort of series, and I don't know whatever happened to that drum kit, but it was like a blue oyster sort of shell covering, really, really cool looking kit, And my father bought it off some guy who was selling it. He knew someone that was selling a drum kit, and and so we invested that money into that kit, and I didn't get a drum kit straight away, which when I started taking lessons, that the kit came at least probably 3 months later or 4 months later, because I think my father wanted to make sure that, okay, now if this is going to be the instrument, we may make sure that you can actually persevere with it, rather than spending the money straight up front and then doing 3 or 4 lessons and then giving up. So, because I wasn't, my track record up until then wasn't that great, Greg,
Okay.
So, but that was a lovely little kit. It was like a little 20-inch kick drum, 12-inch tom, 16-inch floor tom. And I had that for I got that in 1983. And I had that all the way up until 89. And so when I turned 18, 19, I was doing some gigs and things like that, and I finally realised that kit I'd outgrown it, and then spent my sort of pocket money on buying another Pearl kit. Actually, it was like a White World Series. It was a beautiful looking kit, and I had that kit for quite a long time before I obviously turned over another one and got I think the next kit after that was like a Premier Signia drum kit that were fresh out of fresh on the scene, and Frank Corniola was bringing those kits in, and around that time I was probably around 95, 96. That's when I got that kit. But the first 2 kits were ironically Pearl kits, and but I've kind of moved on from those and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So
we'll talk about your current kit a bit later.
Absolutely,
but, the music, what were the albums you were getting into growing up?
Yeah, I was a lot of Beatles stuff, whatever was on the radio. So obviously I'm a product of the 80s, so it was a lot of 80s music. Van Halen was a big influence. I mean at that time I was obviously the 1984 album kind of turned my head, and then I went back to go, well, okay, I must listen to their other records, and around that time CDs were being manufactured, so I bought all the early stuff on CD, so then became a fan of that stuff, and not ironically, but just coincidentally, I was listening to a lot of jazz through my brother, because when he was taking guitar lessons, he was bringing home a lot of jazz records. So at a very early age, I was listening to guitar players like Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, Barney Kessel, Herb Ellis, I listened to piano players like Oscar Peterson, Monty Alexander, and the list goes on. And because of those great records, I was sort of also listening to great drummers. So the jazz thing and the swing element was pretty heavy in the household growing up, and that was purely thanks to my brother Jack. And also Dad's influence was more like Latin music and classical. So I was listening to a lot of that sort of stuff. It was hard to escape music in the house. It was always something was always being played or listened to. So, but I was, like I said, I'm a product of the '80s. So that era of music to me was really influential. But getting into the Beatles was a definite advantage.
Yeah. So Ringo was he your main man?
I guess he was probably, without even knowing it, he was like my earliest influences, purely because of being introduced to the music, But also the early influences were like because of my drum teacher as well, Peter Blick. He introduced me to listening to current drummers and some of the older cats too. So he got me into, listening to Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa and some of the earlier jazz fusion drummers of the time, like, Billy Cobham, Lenny White. But, he was just introducing me to their music. So bands like Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, which both had Billy and Lenny in those bands respectively. So you kind of hear the music first, and then you find out, who's played drums on this stuff, and then you start realising that these guys were the heavyweights, And then you also discover Miles Davis and the bands that he had, the drummers that he had. I'm a big Tony Williams fan, and so I think that all that sort of music kind of created the fabric for my development, musically. So I had the pop music, I had the jazz and the rock, and Latin, because I was listening to Latin. So all this stuff I was absorbing without even knowing it, if you know what I mean, which I think is a good thing,
Yeah. So as you started to learn more about drumming and drums, what led to the kit that you have now, and why did you choose the kit you have now?
Well, the DW thing came out of I played these drums in '98 when I was playing with Bachelor Girl. We had hired some backline, and a DW kit arrived instead of whatever it was I had sort of asked for, specified for, And I went, oh wow, I've always wanted to try a DW kit. And the seed had been planted when I tried a DW kit in '98 and just went, wow, these drums are really special. And so what I remember from that time was everything was the tuning, the tone of the drums were unique. The tuning was really easy to tune. So it was, like I said, it kind of planted the seed for if I ever got the opportunity to buy one, I'm going to do it, And so I did. The opportunity came up where I purchased this kit, and then I was asked to be an endorsee, and I said gladly, I'm happy to endorse a drum kit that I pay for and love, purely because of the sound that it extracts and its playability, the hardware. It's not hard to see how good these kits are. It really, and anywhere I go now, I try and specify a DW kit. Well, actually, I specify a DW kit, and when I do get them, they are so consistent across the board. They might have been beaten up, maybe the shells are a bit sort of scratched and what have you, but the actual sound of the drums are so consistent. That's why I love these drums and this company, and especially the Australian support. The Diodaro, distribute these drums, and they just do a fantastic job, and help me out, and they're great in helping other artists, DW artists out as well. And I like that. I like a company that's people orientated. You know, the product's great, but for me, the people are going to be great to work with. You know, and forge a relationship with. Yeah, to me, it's actually more important than the gear.
Yeah, and your kit, what's it usually consist of when you're playing on stage?
It's pretty much this setup, which is I asked for a 20. This is a 20 by 18 kick drum. This is a 10 by 8 tom, 12 by 8 second rack, 14 by 14 floor, and a 16 by 14 floor tom. Snare drums I usually take my own with me. I might take this one with me, or maybe a piccolo. I've got a copper piccolo that I sometimes take out on the road with me. So that's the wish list, you know. And if I get that, great. If not, there might be, you know, the tom sizes might be a little bit different, but definitely a 10 and a 12. And it's usually the depth that they can't supply sometimes, you know. And usually sometimes a 20 by 18 is pretty hard to get, so they might substitute it for a 22. And I'm totally happy with that. You know, that sounds equally as good as my 20. So, and pretty much the same hardware, like just my four boom stands, what have you. I actually got some Yamaha gear on here with for my cymbal stands, and there's a couple of DW things here as well. But and a Series 5000 double kick pedals. There's 900 Series 9000 hi-hat stand. Really durable stuff, you know. And so when when you're on a gig, you don't want things to sort of fall apart on you. Once you tighten them up, they stay put, like a Sherman tank, really, you know. And the thing I love about these drum kits is their finishes too. Like the one I have here is it's called a natural fade to magenta. And when I put the order in, the guys at Dadari said, "Are you sure? Like, you want that colour?" And I said, "Yeah, it looks great in the catalogue, you know." And they went, "Okay." So they ordered the drum kit, and when it came in, they rang me and said, "Your kit's here." I said, "Okay, well, take it out of the box, and, you know, they said, "Don't you want to do it?" I said, No, you do it, you know. Just send me a picture. And that was before the whole fad of unboxing, you know. If I'd known that was a thing, I would have done it myself, right? But we're going back to 2009 when I got this drum kit. So, and all I could hear from the other side of the phone was when they took this floor tom out, all I heard was, "Oh, wow." That's what I heard on the other side of the phone. I went, "It's good, huh?" Yeah. So it's a pretty unique finish. I haven't seen another one floating around, so I'm quite happy about that, you know. But I love these drums, I really do, and the heads too. Like I'm a proud Evans endorsee, and at the minute there's G1 coded on these toms, and an EMAT on the bass drum. I might swap these over for coded G1s or coded G2s. Or a clear G2, depending on the playing situation. But more often than not, my snare drum, I'm using an Evans ST Dry. And that's one of my go-to snare drum heads. On all my snare drums, I have this head. Yeah, so reliable.
What about your cymbals? What do you require from your cymbals?
I require them to be musically flexible. So if I'm on a gig that's, I'm playing a number of different styles, I choose a set that can cater for as many of those styles as possible. So, you know, I have a range of Sabian cymbals that I use to choose from, and I need them to suit the music. So if I'm playing maybe with like a pop artist, I will choose brighter cymbals, so maybe the Evolution range or the AA range. If I'm doing something that's like a jazzier type, setting, these cymbals would be perfect for that. This is like a custom shop Sabian. It's a real dry ride, real nice stick definition, lovely wash, and hand hammered cymbals too, so they just suit the music, and they're easy to play too. They they respond great at low levels, you know, low volumes, I should say. And sometimes I'll pull out this little stack cymbal here, which is, I've had this stack now, or this combination, probably since 2001. And it was just an absolute accident that I put these cymbals together, and I like the sound of it. And so, so it's a 14-inch China with a 10-inch splash mounted inside, and I kind of like having this all the time, regardless of sometimes the genre that I'm playing it. Don't know why. Maybe it's like a security blanket or something or other. I'm not really sure, but it's a real funky, trashy cymbal which and has a modern sound. And now they're all the rage. Like, all the companies are making these cymbals that are stacked up, and you can buy, like, you know, 3 of them, and they're made different sizes, and they sound incredible. You know, they sound really cool. But I don't need to go down that road because I already got my own, you know, or for the moment anyway. You know, maybe in a couple of years' time, I might look at my drum kit and go, oh, there's a whole different cymbal setup here, you know. But I just need my cymbals to be as adaptable as possible and playable. Thin cymbals for me are the way to go.
Okay.
Thin cymbals, yeah.
You do a wide variety of gigs, from playing with bands to studio work to theatre shows. Obviously, the work is great,
Yep.
having all those jobs. What else do you get from the variety of work?
I guess I get a sense of sort of satisfaction, actually, knowing that I'm able to kind of put myself, or firstly to be asked to be put in different situations, knowing that the person that's booked me knows that I'm capable of doing that. So there's a degree of satisfaction in that, knowing that my years and years of, 30 years of playing has resulted in my ultimate goal, which is to be that all-round musician or drummer, you know. And to me, that's I feel really sort of happy about that, and knowing that I can not pick and choose what gigs I do, but I know that something's going to come up if there's a bit of a gap in the diary, you know. And it might be doing, like you said, a theatre production, or it might be doing some sessions for somebody, like an album, a pop artist, or whatever. It might be some touring, you know. Teaching's a big part of my life as well, so I've always had that to keep me occupied. And also, I do a lot of studio work here in my drum room. So what I get out of that is, again, satisfaction, knowing that I can receive a drum track or receive a piece of music, give the person what they need, and put my own opinions or whatever it is on the shelf for the moment, and play what's required for the song, make them happy, and then once I send the track out and I receive an email going, yep, everything's great, we love it, shoot over the files, we're ready to mix, job done. That makes me feel good, knowing it's not back and forth sort of thing, and also knowing that my musical, I like to call it judgment, is in the ballpark with different artists, you know. So, yeah, and again, to be asked to play on someone's recording or to go and do a theatre show, it's validation of what you've been working hard for the last 30 years, you know. But that, you know, when I say that, it kind of it's sort of like a goal, but it's not really, because that's what we do as musicians. We should be striving to play in different scenarios as possible, you know. It's just now that I can look back and go, oh, well, that was the path I was taking, but I didn't even know that was the path, you know. I'm just as happy playing in a little club to 10 people and doing, you know, burning on some jazz thing or something, whatever it is, or whatever, as well. Yeah, happy, and also happy to play in a theatre pit, happy to play in front of an audience in a theatre, or, you know, an arena type setting or something like that. To me, there's no such thing as, or to me, all that it requires the same skill set as a musician. It doesn't say, like a lot of people go, oh, it must be great. You know, how did you get playing to 10,000 people? It's like, well, I just play drums. Yeah, but The next night I'm playing to 20 people in a jazz club. Still the same feeling. You still finish the gig going, hey, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Same thing as walking off, playing with Daryl's gig, with Daryl's thing. It's the same sort of thing. You finish the gig. The next night you might be doing a function gig. You know what I mean? Back down to reality, but it's all the same. So yeah.
Okay, well let's get specific about some of the things you've done, and just tell me about the experiences. Carols by Candlelight at the Music Bowlers gig you've been doing for quite some time.
Yeah, 20 years now.
With your mates.
Yep.
What's that whole experience like?
Oh, it's a wonderful experience. Bit of a pressure cooker, usually, just purely because of the way we set up. 2 days before the gig, and we rehearse. Like the 22nd of December, then it's the 23rd of December, then the gig's live on the 24th, Christmas Eve. So there's not much rehearsal time with each artist. So you got to have your reading chops together and be alert, sort of thing. But the overall experience of 20 years of doing this gig, I mean, I never thought I'd last that long, and none of us did really. It's great. It's really cool. And I've met so many lovely artists, the regular crew that they're year in, year out, They're always really friendly, always saying hi. Because we're all in this, we've all been doing this gig for a long time now, to some more than others, And I just love the fact that, myself and Craig Newman have done this for 20 years together, along with John Foreman. Obviously, John's been there. I was asked by him when he took over the reins to do the gig, and so which was some big shoes to fill there. Like the late great Ron Sandilands was the drummer, and with Jeff Harvey at the Realm. So I remember as a teenager watching carols and enjoying the whole spectacle. Not thinking that one day you'd be doing the gig. You just don't think like that, So when it landed in my lap, it was, wow, okay, well, this is a pretty big gig, nationwide. And where I was set up too, it's like the camera, you'd be right behind the artist. Like most of the times you were in shot. So that was kind of, sort of, bit nervous about that sort of thing, but because half the time you just see me, my head buried in the charts, there's no time to kind of showboat any of that sort of stuff. Well, you really haven't got any time. You haven't got time to think about that stuff. It's all about reading the charts right and making sure you don't screw up, and also being alert. Like I said before, the whole experience of that is that we've had certain artists that may miss a cue or may miss their entry, or 4 bars or 8 bars rest, and and they might come in a bit early. So you've got our illustrious leader talking to us through his microphone. Okay, we went out, now we're at bar 30, bar 31, so you can hear the whole band just all of a sudden semi-crumble, and then all of a sudden we're back on track to make it sound like that there wasn't an incident, So that's happened a few times, but you'd never know on listening back to the performance, because everybody's on board with that gig. Everybody has their best interest at heart, is to make it sound good, And it's some of these musicians I only see once a year, particularly some of the horn players, Whereas the rhythm section I see quite often was Craig Newman, Phil Turgio has been doing it for ages, and then my brother's been doing the gig, And before that was the great Simon Patterson, which was great because we had a little trio going on at the time too, a little band called Project 3. So we did a lot of playing together, and to culminate in doing carols was to do it with my brothers, it was great. And now I've got my actual real brother doing the gig, which is pretty cool. So I get to spend Christmas Eve with him, And he has a stellar gig too, and it's a real stress situation, live to air. There's not many live to air gigs going around, so it's sort of like a dying art, And I think a lot of people don't realise that how much pressure there is on everyone, not just the band or the orchestra, the artists, the lighting guys, the sound guys, the compares, the person running the audio cue, you know, all that sort of stuff. Everybody has to be sort of switched on to do it, and then you got to read your charts and things like that, and it's a great experience actually. Yeah,
another gig you would never have imagined doing with your mates again. You're part of the Larry Carlton band.
Oh yeah.
How was that experience?
Oh, that was incredible. Oh, that was wow. Just getting goosebumps just thinking about that. Actually, I didn't expect you to ask me that question, but yeah, thinking back on that experience is it's just a humbling. You get to play with someone that you've listened to all your life. That was one of the other guys that my brother would bring home with like some Larry Carlton records too. So I was well aware of his playing, and I was also well aware of who played on his records. So it was on all of Larry's solo records, studio solo records, was the great Geoff Achison. So when that gig came up, when we were asked to support him, be part of his band, what an honour, geez, and he was the sweetest guy. Unbelievable. And he, the first rehearsal, we only had one rehearsal before the tour, so he, I remember I picked him up from the hotel, and we drove to the rehearsal room. There was an amp there for him to play, and unlocks his guitar, and there it is, the 335. That's the one. That's the one that did 90% of all his session stuff. That's the guitar. So he's pulling that guitar out, and we play. He calls a tune, so we play it, and he calls another rather difficult tune, one of the probably harder ones in the set list, and we played that, and then he just kind of put his guitar down and goes, right, let's go and grab some lunch. So so we all looked at each other and went, okay, if Larry wants to go and grab some lunch, we'll go get some lunch. And I think it was his way of saying, I don't have to worry about these guys. They've learnt my stuff. And it's going to be okay. So we had lunch, came back, obviously ran the rest of the set list, And then just from gig to gig, the band just got tighter and tighter and tighter, and it was great. There's YouTube footage of us in Brisbane playing, I think the majority of the gigs up there, but what's really particularly great about that gig is that Larry invited Louis Sheldon up to play. Now, Louis was part of the Wrecking Crew and also responsible for getting Larry into the session scene, as well as Tommy Tedesco and those gentlemen, those guys. But Louis now lives up in the Gold Coast. And it was actually Larry that contacted Louis to ask if he could recommend some musicians to play on this tour, and it was upon Louis' recommendation that he rang me and asked. He said, "Would you like to do it?" And he goes, is there anyone else you think could do the gig? I said, "Yeah, I got the perfect band," because around that time we were still doing the Damage thing, the fusion band. So it all worked out great. But so Larry invited Louis down to play with us, and he got up and played two tunes with us, and just seeing those two giants of guitar players playing this stuff, I'm just again goosebumps, man. It's sort of like a pinch me moment, And Larry was always on, playing wise. It's just beautiful, man. His tone is just. Everyone talks about his tone, but I got to hear it, like where you are. That's what I was hearing every night, and he could have turned up to 11. I wouldn't have cared at all, because his tone was so sweet, just like what you hear on his recordings, which I think is remarkable. So that whole experience was just joyous. And Rick Wheeler was his sound guy and tour manager, and they welcomed us with open arms, and I thought it was fabulous, Hopefully it might happen again. It was a long time ago that it happened, but I do believe that Larry still gigs a little bit, but I don't think he likes to travel as far anymore. So, yeah. But yeah.
Obviously, we can't talk about every band you've been in. But,
no, of course not.
One
I don't want to bore the viewers.
One band that you've been in for a long time is Geoff Achison and the Soul Diggers.
Yeah.
I was up at Bluesfest last year. I think it was either the day before or on the day that you lost your bass player, Roger.
Oh, yes.
Couldn't play because of COVID. You're about to play Bluesfest again.
That's right, yeah. Geez, I forgot about that, yeah.
So what is it about Geoff and that band that you enjoy?
Oh, look, they're my brothers in that band. And what I love about Geoff in particular is that he gives you, you know, the green light to play as an artist. And I think, and that goes for the same for Roger and for Richard as well, Richard Tankard, who's our keyboard player. And it's kind of, people kind of misunderstand Geoff's music when they see us live. It's that they think we're like a jam band. Yes and no. These are songs. So when they hear us jam out, they're actually like sections of these jams that are subtle cues to let us know, like Geoff might play something, and it's a subtle cue to let us go to the next section, you know, without having to do, you know, head nods and blah, blah, blah. We hear Geoff play something, we know where we're going. And sometimes these songs go for like, you know, 7-8 minutes long, you know, 9 minutes long or whatever. So I love the fact that we're allowed to really kind of explore these songs while we're live, you know. And I get to play with Roger. You know, I've known Roger took me under his wing like back in 92. Started recommending me for work. You know, I was only 22. You know, 22, 23. And so I owe a lot to Rog, you know, and I owe a lot to Geoff too, because of late I've been really busy doing Daryl Braithwaite's gig, and that's taken me away from doing Geoff's gig. But I'm happy to say that I'll be, you know, at Bluesfest this weekend. So we're getting a chance to actually kind of play again together. And having Richard in the band too. Richard's the same age as me, so we have a lot of things in common musically, you know. And so we get along so well. I mean, the whole band gets along so well. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like, everyone really respects each other and love each other, and we play for each other. And I think once you got that, it's like the perfect storm. You know, you've got everyone's got each other's back. That's what I look. That's what I love about Geoff's band. You know, and we go out there and play, and there's no holding back. No matter if something's going wrong sound-wise, whatever, we just go up there and just play. You know, and I love that about that band. And Geoff writes some great tunes too. You know, I love that. And you know, he'll handball some stuff over to me, and we recorded some tracks during lockdown, you know, and we got the ball rolling remotely, you know, and you know, he trusts you to do something. You know, not many artists go, here, what do you think? What would you play? You know, and even on even certain arrangement situations, you might say, hey, can we maybe cut this verse in half or whatever it is like that? And Geoff's totally open to that, you know, as long as we try it first, you know. And if it, you know, my suggestions or his suggestions or Roger's or Richard's may not work, but we all put it out there to see if it does work. And if it does work, great. If it doesn't, no big deal. No one's finger pointing at each other, you know, all that typical sort of band stuff that goes on, you know, which is I'm kind of too old for that sort of stuff. Yeah, you know.
You're a drummer, but you've always been a big part of the Melbourne Guitar Show.
Yeah.
What are your Melbourne Guitar Show memories?
Oh, well, you know, obviously the big one was that when we played the Van Halen one album back to back, that turned out to be quite a bit of a nugget, I reckon. That was it turned out so great. So that memory, even just you know, the recent one, I got to play back there again with Chris Bieniek and doing his sort of tribute to jazz fusion guitar players. I love the Melbourne Guitar Festival because I'm a wannabe guitar player, and I love guitar players. And so being amongst that crew is a different feeling to being amongst a whole you know, group of drummers and things, which I love as well. Right? We're all we're all brothers in that regard as well. But I love putting myself in another group of people, guitar players, and they're all diverse. They're all different. That's what I love about it, you know. So I'm lucky that I get to play with some of these players, and also I get to hear some new players too. I just remember this year I was just walking around the exhibitors and bumping into people that I know at different stands and things like that. And there was a young guy playing just in one of the cubicles or whatever it is, and he was playing some jazzy stuff. And I was talking to someone, I just went, hang on a minute. And I started listening to this guy, and I just went, I've never heard of this guy, you know. But he just said, just kind of noodling and doing his thing, but he sounded beautiful, you know. That's what I love about those sort of shows, where you pick up on, you know, other guitar players you've never heard of. So I just go up there and introduce myself and say, hey man, I really love what you just played. It's great, you know. What's your name? So sort of thing. Get to meet people, other musicians. But definitely the highlight was the Van Halen thing, you know. And we've done it with Geoff as well. We've done some things with Acho. I'm just trying to think of any other highlights of that thing, but no, the Van Halen thing, man.
Yeah,
the Van Halen thing, guys. Wow.
Which brings us up to the current situation, a new band, Luoda, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, it's one way of saying it, yeah, Luoda, yeah.
Tell me all about it.
Well, Luoda, I've got to get used to saying it myself too, is the brainchild of Glenn Cannon. Now, Glenn is a Melbourne-based guitar player. Speaking of guitar players, right, is another one. And I've known Glenn for over 20 years. And I first started playing with him in a band, filling in for their drummer in a band called Logic. So it was like a jazz fusion situation. Him and Tim Wilson were the leaders of that band. And we did some touring together and whatnot and some gigs. So when he had this project, he presented it to me. Would you like to be a part of it? I said, well, can you play me something, send me something? Yeah. I didn't really need to ask for anything because I knew it was going to be great. But I was just curious to hear what he's on about and what sort of music he's writing. So he sent me some stuff that him and the vocalist have been working on. I said, yeah, I'm in. I'm totally in. So the band is essentially vocal based, 4 singers. Janine Maunder, let me grab the CD. I can tell you exactly who was on there. I've bloody forgotten myself. Oh yeah. So Josh Kyle is on the seat. Is one of the vocalists. Troy McMillan, Rocky Lepravidi. So there's 4 males and 1 female, and the blend of their vocals is just amazing. That's what drew me to it. I think it was the way they harmonise, because they're all individual singers. They are brilliant. Together, it's something to hear. It really is. And so Glenn had written these tunes, but then given these tunes to these singers to write the lyrics. So they were putting lyrics to his melodies. And so I just loved that combination. And then I asked him, what's going to be the band lineup? And he told me, and I said, yeah, I'm in. So we did a couple of gigs prior to lockdown. We only did maybe 2 or 3, which is pretty hard to coordinate when you've got like a 10-piece band, right? But we managed to do some gigs, and then lockdown happened. And then so I suggested that, why don't we start tracking it, like tracking these tunes? And we had 10 tunes ready to go. So I started the process by recording the drums here. And then once we're allowed to have people over to your homes. I got Ash Smith to play bass, come here and record it here, and Darren Archer to play keyboards, because those guys didn't have a remote recording setup at home. And then Glenn came over as well, so we did all the rhythm tracks here, and then once they were all done, handed over to the singers, and one by one they recorded their parts. So which was really challenging because they really should have been together, tracking it so they can get their the phrasing right and what have you. But it worked out a treat. Those guys really did the hard yards on it to make it sound bang on. So then I would receive the files here from everyone, and then just start mixing, what have you. but I wasn't supposed to mix the record. It was never discussed. It kind of just fell in my lap because I'd started recording, and then Glenn said, "Hey man, these tracks are starting to sound really good. You know, do you want to mix it?" I went, "Oh, okay. If you want me to go down that road, let's do it." Okay. So I said, "Thanks. Yeah, okay. I'll give it a shot." You know, because we were in lockdown for so long, I took my time mixing it. You know, just was really meticulous with it, and just you know, mix one track and then leave it for a day. We come back and listen again. Oh, I'll tweak that again, and then let it rest. And so I'm really proud of that recording, which is actually this one here, folks. Go out and get it. Yeah. You know, it's on streaming services and such like that.
So it's out now?
It's out now. Yeah. So it is I'm particularly proud of this recording, purely because of the way we did it, and also because of the people involved. Again, great individual people. But when we come together as a group, it's amazing. It's actually euphoric. If that sounds corny, but you know, as a drummer, I love singers. I love singers that kind of kick your ass a little bit, you know, or a lot, you know. So these four great singers do that individually and as a group. It's sort of like also, you know, great singers like, you know, Daryl, another one, Farnham, those guys, John Steve, those sort of guys that sing, you know, Jimmy Couples, you know, Peter Couples for that matter, you know, Kate Sobrano. I've only had the pleasure of backing her a few times on carols, but you know, I just saw her recently do a gig, and off stage, her presence on stage, I should say, singing is phenomenal. And as a drummer, you kind of want to go, yeah, let's go. You know, you need this. You want me to kind of go, I'm going to follow you. You know, so this is what that band's all about as well. And it's so dynamically, the material is so dynamically wide, stylistically different. But yet there's a common thread around the whole album. So I really hope people get a chance to listen to it, you know, on their Spotify's or whatever it is, you know, and maybe make a purchase to help support local. You know, we're not in it to make money. You know, this project was never to make money. You know, I think those sort of things are, you're a little bit delusional, you know, that sort of thing. But if we can kind of like recoup some costs, that'd be great, right? But it's purely because this music needs to be heard. Yeah. We're so proud. I'm so proud of this, and I think we all are too, of what we're doing with this project, you know. So, yeah, it all done in lockdown, which was, you know, a shame. It was a shame that we did it that way, but again, we have to kind of keep ourselves creatively sort of engaged, and that's what that record did. Yeah.
So, Gerry, you've done so much over a long period of time.
Yep.
What's the grand plan from here? What's the ultimate goal?
Oh, the ultimate goal. Good question. I think it's just to keep playing until I can't play anymore. You know, so I think we all know what that means, right? So I am happy to keep developing as a musician, keep striving to get better at playing the drums. There's still more things for me to work on, and I'm always practicing something to kind of refine my playing. You know, being a better musician, being a better person. You know, I'm always just. I think we just got to be better at being nicer to each other. You know, so I think, you know, and as we grow older, those things become important. They're really important. You know, I want to maintain my friendships. I want to maintain my health as much as I can. I want to play with as many different types of musicians as possible, rather than just staying in the same sort of, you know, group or cluster. You know, and I think I'm doing that at the minute. I'm kind of, you know, playing with different people, which inspires me to play differently, and to think about music a little bit differently, and to think about who I am as a musician differently. And I think that's something that I want to progressively get better at. If I haven't learned it over 30 years, I'm going to keep going until I do. You know what I mean? So, and also keep recording in this room. I want to keep being creative and play on different projects, in which I currently am at the minute, doing some really cool stuff, which is, it will see the light of day, you know. And yeah, I just hope that I'm still employable, you know, and I'm not getting that, I'm not being too old-fashioned or what have you, you know. So I'm trying to be as contemporary as possible, but still maintaining the things that I love about drumming and music, and that's what I hope to get out of the next, I don't know, 20-something years maybe. Touch wood, touch DW wood. There it is, mate. Bit of maple there.
Well, Gerry, it's been great to chat, and thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Greg, for having me on the magazine again, mate. Thank you so much.